This is Channel 253.
In this episode of Crossing Division.
The extreme conservative base of yours that tries to fold all of this into cancel culture and critical race theory, right. And we heard all of those words during this debate, that your job as a leader to denounce that and to push back. Otherwise, the extremeness of your party is going to take over your party, and that's not good for you, and that's not good for anyone.
Channel 253 is a member-supported podcast network. I'm producer Doug Mackey, and I'm asking you to become a member and show your support. Go to channel253.com/membership to join. Thank you.
Hi, this is Evelyn Lopez. Today on Crossing Division, we have Ryan Mello, Pierce County Council member, and Ryan's County Council person assistant, Evan. We are going to talk about Pride. Pride in Pierce County, Pride in Tacoma. And we're going to start by talking about the county proclamation of Pride. And I got to tell you, this surprised me because I just assumed that in the past, at some point, Pierce County would have passed a proclamation saying, hey, it's Pride. We're so excited. We are so thrilled that we have people who are police and firefighters and teachers and county employees and all of them who are proud members of the LGBTQ plus community, and we want to show our support for them. So I thought there had been a proclamation or something in the past, but I was wrong.
You and many others.
So tell me, Ryan, what is the story behind this idea that we would have a proclamation in support of Pride Month in Pierce County?
Yeah, so you're not alone. Hundreds of folks have written in. We're told by some of our colleagues who have been on the county council for a while, this is the issue that has garnered the most constituent contact, interestingly, even more than when the Republicans tried to completely get rid of the health department.
Right.
So more than that, believe it or not. And many thought, what? Surely Pierce in 2021. It's 2021. Surely Pierce County has declared Pride Month before.
Yeah.
So it's the first time ever. And, when Evan and I were working on the proclamation with our colleagues, and we started, about a week ago, started to get a lot of pushback. It became clear to us that someone got to some of the conservative base.
So how did that happen? So you're having meetings with your other county council members and saying, here's the idea or here's a draft of the proclamation. And initially, did it seem like everyone was saying, oh, that sounds pretty good?
Initially, it seemed fine. I had two of my three conservative colleagues engage in conversation that I thought was very productive, offered red line changes, which we're happy to dialogue about. Some we accepted, a lot we accepted, some we didn't. For example, one of the many changes that boggled my mind that they wanted was to remove the word celebrate.
What? So it would just be recognize. We
Recognize.
recognize that there is something going on. That's it.
Yes. And lots of whereases removed around, we tell the story, right, through a proclamation like that about the marginalized community and how LGBT people are disproportionately commit suicide, disproportionately, especially youth found homeless.
Yeah.
Why is that? A lot of that is because of lack of affirmation.
Yeah, the lack of acceptance.
In their especially growing up, right? There's a reason why there's higher mental health issues and lack of civic inclusion and employment discrimination because of the lack of acceptance.
Yeah.
So we, believe it or not, went back and forth 5 different versions with two of my 3 Republican colleagues for the most part. Quite productive, amiable, professional conversations going back and forth, accepting most of it.
Yeah.
Don't know who, but some, this is very unusual. So someone we told leaked it to another very conservative, we're told, the Senator Mark Milosha, former Senator Mark Milosha.
Oh, yeah, Mark Milosha out of Federal Way. Yeah.
Very, very connected to the ultra conservative, religious conservative
Yes.
base, and so they lit up their network, as they did with, say, Senator Jim McCune's anti-pornography proclamation or whatever many years ago.
Right.
They lit up the chambers then. So the inboxes filled up, phone calls started to come in. I think well over 700 emails.
Wow.
But so many folks like you said, really, this is the first time ever. So we're proud that we crossed that hurdle. But more to share about the what's going on on the inside. Unfortunately, at the end of the day, it was a party line vote. The 4 Democrats, of course, voted in favor, and 2 abstentions by 2 of the Republicans and 1 no vote. Also interestingly, for years and years, including the last 6 months of my tenure on the Pierce County Council, the executive would just sign on. His signature would be alongside all 7 signatures of the county council for every proclamation.
Right.
Last week we recognized Miriam Barnett's service to the YWCA
Right.
for a long time, and Michael Miro's service at Tacoma Housing Authority. On and on and on. Every proclamation, it's really standard. The county executive, he says, not coincidentally, but last week made a new policy that he would not put his name on a proclamation that did not have the support of all 7 members of the county council.
Right.
So he just made up, it had nothing to do with pride, he
Right.
says.
Oh, nothing to do with pride. But it's not in the charter.
It's not in the charter.
It's not in the law.
No. And
It has not been past practice.
but and he just made this policy last week, not connected to pride. So we heard him, we pushed back and we said, Bruce, how can that possibly be? We don't know that there's 7 votes on any. It's a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act for us to count those noses. So we can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to leave your name off of every proclamation, because at the county we vote on these proclamations, and it's a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act to know
Which
what
ones
the
are
vote count's
have.
going to be.
Right. Oh, good point.
So no longer will the county executives. We said, why don't you just make a decision for yourself whether you're going to put your name on the proclamations?
I mean, he could issue his own press release.
He could issue his own proclamations, his own press releases.
Yeah.
He could also make up his own mind about whether or not he wants to put his name on a proclamation.
Sure.
But so there's going to be a new practice of not having the executive's name alongside the council, and we'll do them separately, I guess.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's in that proclamation. So I pulled this up off the Pierce County website, and I won't read the whole thing, although it's not very long, but listen to this. These are the controversial statements. Whereas we affirm the dignity of all people, and we call on the people of Pierce County to reflect on the importance of mutual respect and love for one another. Who doesn't like that, right?
Right.
Here's another. The next. Whereas every Pierce County resident should be able to live without fear of prejudice, discrimination, violence, or hatred based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. And whereas members of the LGBTQ plus community have contributed richly to civic, economic, cultural, and public life, and Pierce County is dedicated to fostering acceptance for all our residents. And whereas despite the progress advancing civil rights for LGBTQ plus Americans, too many LGBTQ plus adults and youth face disproportionate impacts when it comes to homelessness, discrimination, suicide, and mental health and civic inclusion. And whereas we are proud of our LGBTQ plus Pierce County employees who serve the people of our community with excellence every day. It basically says, based on these things, we celebrate our people, and we celebrate love and inclusion and being a community. How can anyone stand up and say, I don't support that?
Yeah, that was really a baffling thing. There's nothing controversial in any of those whereas statements. It's all positive, trying to lift up a highly marginalized community for oh so long. So we wrote it positively on purpose.
So I have to assume that if someone is not willing to sign this, that they are in fact not in favor of LGBTQ people having autonomy, rights, the ability to live freely, to celebrate their love, that they are against that. That's my conclusion.
I think it's a logical conclusion, unfortunately. I was really hoping that we would have a bipartisan proclamation, especially for the first time ever.
Yeah.
It is really historic.
So to me, this doesn't say very much about some of the county leaders and their respect or appreciation for their county employees. But I'm going to take this from sort of a Republican point of view. What does this say out to the corporate business community of Washington State? What does it say to Boeing and Weyerhaeuser and Amazon and Microsoft? All of these companies that have come out very strongly in supporting Pride and supporting the gay community. And it says, and these are all employers that we would like to attract to Pierce County. Mm-hmm. Are they going to come here? I mean, did we just make Pierce County more attractive or less attractive to future employers?
The economic argument is a real one. And these kinds of employers, they're very smart. And they go after intellectual capital and talent, right? And they whether you're LGBT or not, and an mm-hmm. ally, don't identify as LGBT, but identify as an ally. These companies are very smart. They know that the talent they're after is looking for a great place to live, right, and a highly accepting and inclusive place to live. And that's the kind of talent they go after. Mm-hmm. So it really does go at the heart of our economy. And all of the, to your point, Evelyn, I worked in legislature for a few years, especially when we were running the anti-discrimination law to add LGBT people to the state's mm-hmm. list of protected classes. And the biggest lobby was the business community. The business community was all in. They had all of their lobbyists all in on making mm-hmm. sure LGBT discrimination became the law of the land. And then several years later, when we were running a marriage equality law, the business community lobby was the most effective and hard-hitting lobby. They know how important this is.
Right. Well, you're absolutely right. They look at, aside from having some corporate ethics, which I think many of them do have, mm-hmm. But they also look at it in terms of who's our customer base, who are our employees, and our employees are going to be generally have high skill sets, maybe very well educated. We want to attract people from a broad cross-section of the community with the best skills available, and none of that is going to be furthered if we have discriminatory policies, if we are saying to a significant portion of our community, you are not welcome here. And I wish that those individuals who maybe have a more conservative view of the world, maybe a more religious conservative view of the world, understood that, when you bring your personal religious beliefs that are exclusionary into the political sector, you are sending a message. And the message is, we have signs that we put up, right? Say, hate has no home here. Mm-hmm. Well, the message in Pierce County is actually there's some room for hate here.
Unfortunately.
How do we sell that?
Yeah. Evan had to field most of these emails and phone calls in our office.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I think, I guess maybe a little bit naively, I was not necessarily expecting the degree to which both the volume, Evelyn, to your point earlier, it was pretty clear that it was something that was being pretty tightly organized in opposition. A lot of the emails that we received were kind of copy and pasted templates, mm-hmm. a lot of, folks using the same language, and again, not 100% sure where that was coming from, but the message did come through pretty clear that, time and time again, I can probably, 50 plus emails that use the exact same language around, what about traditional family values? Like this goes against my, all of this exclusionary language that just makes no room for the diversity and inclusive nature that we're talking about here that, attracts that broader economic development business to a place like Pierce County. So that was something that I think, yeah, again, a little naively, I wasn't quite expecting the volume or that type of rhetoric. And, last week, I think before this was really on the radar, more broadly, within the community and kind of just political discussions, like Thursday and Friday of last week, I think were days where we exclusively had negative emails coming in. And we got a lot of really great, really positive support both at the council meeting, over the weekend as well. But just to see the amount of vitriol out there was a little, definitely reason for pause, I would say.
Yeah, I have a friend who has a child who's a trans child, and her response, she was feeling profoundly heartbroken over people being so comfortable saying hateful things about her child, and she was worrying about, what does the future hold for my son. And I think that's the thing that people may not realize when they get sort of deep into these culture war type battles is that, you think you're talking about sort of theory. What's a traditional family? What are, my values or my belief systems? But you're not. You're really talking about someone's brother, a person, and, people who are LGBTQ. I mean, they have spent their lifetimes pondering, do I belong? Where do I fit? Will I find love? Will I find a place that accepts me? And all of these things, it comes back. It's pretty cruel, actually.
Mm-hmm. The affirmation's incredibly important. I commented to Evan, I too was taken aback at the intensity of the vitriol and the quantity. People who took the time to write in and then call into the meeting. We're still in these Zoom meetings, soon moving to in person. But that someone took the time, especially on the negative side, took the time to do all that. So I reflected on that, and then the intensity on the inclusive side, the pro-LGBT inclusive side, the elation and the how important this was. So reflecting on that, I said, we're not changing county code here. Right? We're going to have some more quote unquote substantive things we're working on that will be changing county code around inclusive gender markers, for example, on county forms and criminal justice system. And so we'll be working on some quote unquote substantive issues. So I said, well, how is something that's quote unquote not substantive, a proclamation, a statement, why is this bringing folks out of the woodwork? And my conclusion last night after reflecting on this was words matter. Symbols matter, words matter, affirmation matters. In fact, it might be the only thing that matters, or to have your government say, we value you, we see you, we see you as a human. And that statement from your government is a big, big deal, even if it doesn't change the county code one iota.
Right.
And it's interesting because, from my perspective, that is the whole point of the proclamation, right? And I think what was, again, surprising with the constituent outreach was that a lot of what we were receiving was, pretty stark claims of the LGBTQ movement is indoctrinating children, all of this stuff about you and the movement that you represent, is in favor of men being in women's bathrooms and teenage boys competing in women's sports, right? So it's this kind of again, that's not that. If folks want to read the proclamation, it is really what Ryan's talking about. It is words of affirmation. It's really recognizing that our county can and should be representative and inclusive of all folks in Pierce County. And so to just kind of, I think the degree to which the debate, quote unquote, around these issues concerning the LGBTQ community, and that they, the arguments against always manifest in these kind of culture war narratives that you see in kind of like the national news, right, is disappointing because that's none of that was in the proclamation. The proclamation, to Ryan's point, was simply to recognize and uplift from a official county government perspective, the LGBTQ community.
Right.
And so that was also a little bit perplexing, I would say,
Yeah.
to see that so involved with those constituent responses.
Yeah, I mean, we're experiencing, nationally everywhere, this level of, it's not new, but this sort of focus on sexuality and identity seems to really touch off a feeling of threat for a lot of people, maybe people who don't know anyone who, is trans or has gone through this change. But there's no way to compassionately address the issue. I mean, I will be the first to say, this is just nonsense, right? It's just nonsense being used to ratchet up everyone's hate and fear and worry, and we don't need to deal with that. But I will say this, for someone who is truly confused and may not understand what's happening, not having the dialogue, not having safe places where you can have discussions, not having a sense of love and appreciation surrounding these issues means you'll never understand. Because no one will ever trust you enough to say, I always felt inside that something was disconnected with the way I look on the outside, and I'm finally able to bring myself into alignment. I mean, the stories that people tell are so profoundly impactful that I actually feel sorry for people who don't listen, who don't know folks who are going through all of these issues and, trying to be their most honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say here quickly that I think one of the things that I really have appreciated in working with Ryan and, being a member of the LGBTQ community myself is that, it's so important to have folks like Ryan on the council, living their lives out and proud as members of the LGBTQ community. Last week, we filmed a video with Senator Randall, Speaker Jenkins, Manny Santiago, who's the executive director of the Washington State LGBTQ Commission in the governor's office, and Marsha Botzer, who, Ryan goes way back with and is a phenomenal community advocate. Can't say enough good things about Marsha, but the degree to which that has an impact on, any kid, anyone really that is, tuning into that council meeting, following along with the type of work that folks like Ryan are doing is huge. And I think, I feel lucky here in Pierce County that we have a decent amount of our legislative delegation, folks in local government. Kristen Ang, called in yesterday as well with the Port Commission to help to testify. And the amount that does and the amount that visibility and representation in local government and state government is can't be overstated. It's something that I think I look for a lot and am very lucky to have the opportunity to work with somebody like Ryan as he prioritizes this on the council.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you were young, Ryan, did you have people that you could look up to that you thought, I see this person and I can see the path ahead of me?
No, not at all, actually. I grew up in a Catholic family, grew up hearing all of the negative stereotypes and making fun of gay people. I can't recall a positive role model or a positive real experience. I got all of the messages to the contrary. My parents and my family, my older brother now have thankfully evolved big time and understand how their words and actions in years ago have hurt myself and likely others. And they've evolved big time. And I have a very loving and affirming family, and I'm very grateful for that.
But you sort of had to chart your own course.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, there was no, there wasn't that Lori Jenkins to see.
Yeah. Well, and I think if you think back, what a difference it would have made if you had some people that you could look at and you could say, they're happy and they're living great lives and they're doing great things in their community. I mean, think of what a difference that would have made to you, and you'll realize what a difference you are making now to kids.
I probably would have came out earlier.
Sure.
Wouldn't have had 8, 9, 10 years of intense internal struggle. Yeah. It's hard.
It's huge.
It's huge, yeah.
And so that, again, sort of hearkening back to why this messaging, as you say, words matter, why this messaging of we get you, we see you, we love you, you are an important part of our community is really critical. And I am really surprised. I mean, sometimes you say I'm surprised when you're not really surprised. But I kind of am surprised because to me it's like, this was low-hanging fruit, right? This was the easy feel-good, as you say, the feel-good proclamation, saying good for you, county employees, good for you, county residents. Let's all gather together and celebrate our achievements. And so when you have elected leaders who can't even agree on the low-hanging fruit, what do you do? I read in the News Tribune today, they have an editorial, a good one, I think, about whether we can expect to see the pride flag hanging over the county building. And their answer is nope, because the county executive has decided, again, one of his new rules is that he also won't do anything about changing the flags from the official flags, which is the United States flag, the state of Washington flag, and they've been, it's been official that you fly the missing in action POW flag, that POWs, when I was a kid, the Vietnam War was on, and that's where that sort of springs from. And it's I won't say it's not relevant today, but I will say it's really kind of an artifact of its time. But those are the only flags that Bruce Dammeier will see flying over the county building.
But probably the Seahawks flag, too.
Oh, the Seahawks. Well, of course, the Seahawks
I'm a big
flag.
Seahawks fan, for the record.
But if you're going to make an exception for the Seahawks, then I think really you've kind of said flags don't actually matter, right? That we do different things for different things that we're celebrating.
Yeah, and these symbols absolutely matter. Again, that's what we made the request. The Democratic majority made the request to the county executive, not really asking permission, just kind of saying who do we talk to? We don't
about putting the flag.
Yeah. Who's the human we talk to that we give the flag to, and we can have a little ceremony. We were not really asking permission. It took them a week to respond and make up this policy, this ad hoc, non-governmental policy. Yeah, and for the record, right, not asking to replace the American flag or the Washington State flag at all. This would fly below those flags like it does at Tacoma City Hall and lots and lots of other institutions.
Lots and other places.
So, we're going to take another run at it. We're likely going to change the policy. We're going to remind the county executive that he's not the policy-making body of the county government. The county council is. And so the county code is silent and absent on non-governmental flags. So we'll create new county code that is more common sense and straightforward about this.
Good. I'm glad. But I guess the question I have is, how do you move forward now? So this was supposed to be pretty much a straightforward process, something that reasonable people probably would not have a great deal of concern about. And it turned into something else. So now you are continuing on. You are a gay man, and you are an elected official on the county council. And your colleagues, one voted no. I disagree with this proclamation. 2 didn't take any action. They abstained. But you need to continue to do business with them. So how do you do that, Ryan?
The 2 abstentions, again, we had a lot of back and forth and a lot of, I think, really positive conversation. The abstentions, I guess I count as a little bit of a victory. We moved them from no to abstention.
Yeah.
As you know, Evelyn, you're a student of government like I am. You use an abstention in elected office when you have a conflict of interest, not when you just don't want to take a side.
Right.
But be it as it may, one of the things moving forward in working with my colleagues, one of them is and I've started this and I'm going to continue to do it. I think it's really important, is to respectfully challenge, especially people like Hans Zeiger and Dave Morrell, the two abstentions, who I think did struggle. I think maybe years ago they would have been an automatic no. Today they were an abstention. Again, maybe mild progress. But I'm going to continue to challenge them and remind them they're elected leaders. Remind them that the extreme conservative base of yours that tries to fold all of this into cancel culture and critical race theory, and we heard all of those words during this debate, that it's your job as a leader to denounce that and to push back. Otherwise, the extremeness of your party is going to take over your party, and that's not good for you, and that's not good for anyone. So you being silent and or saying, "Oh, I hear both sides," that false equivalency, complete false equivalency. You cannot give power to the extremeness of the radical right here. And it's your job as an elected leader to push back, to lead, to call out what exactly this is about and what this is not about, and to push back. You owe it to your constituents to do that. So that's the kind of conversation I'm going to have with folks like Dave and Hans. And we're going to continue to move forward. There's a lot of work to do in the criminal justice system around a lot of issues around race and other marginalized communities like LGBT folks. How the criminal justice system serves marginalized communities is a big part of what we're going to be working on. And there's so many other things that county government needs to catch up on in order to be way more inclusive.
Do you think strategically does this change at all your preference for, because I think you tend to be a very collaborative leader and you like to try to figure out how you can find, win-win outcomes for yourself and your colleagues, even if they see the world differently than you do. Does that still work for you, or do you think this sort of thing makes you feel like, forget that, I'm just going to move down the road?
There are some things where, we're not going to compromise on our values. Like we didn't compromise on this when some said, "Hey, you don't have unanimity on this. Can you please make it go away?" We said absolutely not. My style is to be highly collaborative, to go the extra mile, to try to listen to others. Like on this proclamation, we went through 5 drafts. So that my tendency is to be highly collaborative. On some things, we're just going to move forward if we can't bring others along, but we're going to work like heck to bring them along, include the other side's good thinking as much as possible. I'm working with Dave Morrell and setting up the county's first equity committee, so that we have citizens who are advising the county on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We don't have a policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion, believe it or not. And a lot of the human infrastructure that goes into making the county government and all of its services, budgeting, policies more culturally competent, none of that exists. So again, working with Dave Morrell, a Republican colleague, we're co-sponsoring the first ever equity committee. I made a lot of compromises and changes in order to bring him along, because I really think working on equity should not be a partisan issue, and if we're going to make really substantive strides, we got to make equity issues, race issues, way less partisan. And so I'm interested in the movement, in moving forward and making advances and trying to make as much of this nonpartisan as possible.
Okay, good. Well, and Evan, sort of as a staff person working for the county council, how do you feel about this? I mean, do you feel that I hate these people now? Or do you feel like, okay, I understand what was going on here. I can find a way to work with folks?
Yeah, no. So to answer your question, no.
I
don't
didn't
hate
think you
these
did.
people, but
Although there must have been a moment. Because
No.
I would have had a moment.
One thing I did do was I did bring my, I have 2 little pride flags that I normally keep at home but are now in the office.
Very good.
That is one thing that I've done. But I think to Ryan's point too, like, I think the more important thing is really doing the work to try to bring folks along. I think, it is a staff environment. We all have to work closely together. We all share the same offices, right? Our office is right next to Councilmember Zeiger's office. So we, these are people that we will continue to work with. And so I think from my perspective, I think Chair Young in his comments yesterday said it really well. I think like what our job is and what Ryan's job is as a leader is to, I think Chair Young said something about like, well, if I wanted a weather vane, to decide where, I need to vote, I'm not going to do a poll because there are times in leadership where you kind of have to take the feedback that you're getting from your constituents and you have to decide whether or not that is in line with your values and the direction that you think that the county should move forward. So I think from our perspective, collaboration is kind of always the answer to, even if it's baby steps, right, going from a no vote to an abstention. That is really the way that progress is going to be made, especially for a council and a county government that has been majority Republican, at least on the council, for quite a while. So I'm excited for that change. I think it's been really exciting to see how, Ryan and Janie and Derek and Marty have come in and how they are using the majority. We had a great example of that last night, right? To make sure that folks in Pierce County know that their government cares about them and recognizes them. So I'm excited to see more of that. I am excited to continue working with other staff collaboratively, hopefully. But like Ryan said, I think it's a balance between working collaboratively, knowing when, is not the time to compromise values just for the sense of collaboration and kind of moving forward together as much as possible.
Good. Well, let's take a break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk about, okay, how are we celebrating Pride? Because there is so much to celebrate.
Hi, I'm Eric Hanberg, host of the Channel 253 podcast Citizen Tacoma, and I've been a customer of Tapco Credit Union since I was a kid. Really. My parents set up a savings account for me, and I've had that account with them ever since. In fact, my first credit card wasn't from a big banking conglomerate. It was from Tapco, and I still have that too. What I appreciate about Tapco is that they are intensely local. Just like Channel 253, Tapco keeps its focus on just Tacoma and Pierce County. They have easy-to-reach locations in the Tacoma area, and when I don't want to drive, I just use online banking. And they still help parents teach their kids good savings habits. The Moolah Kids Club teaches kids about savings, not only through interest on their money, but with special prizes like cupcakes and discounts at local attractions. So if you want to help your kids start a savings account the same way my parents did, check out our local credit union at tapcocu.org. My thanks to Tapco for their support of this podcast and Channel 253.
Hi, we're back. So before we get into talking about all of the things to do for Pride, and I got to tell you, I've got a big list here. If you are not yet a member of Channel 253, I hope you will consider joining us. It is $4 a month or $40 a year. You get access to all of our podcasts, a few member perks, such as the Off the Record podcast hosted by Doug Mackey, our producer, and a great Slack channel for community engagement and discussion. So I hope you will consider joining us.
My partner and I love being members of Channel 253.
Good.
My partner Sean has a little bit more of a flexible schedule than I do. Works from home, very busy, but works from home and often listens to your podcast before I do, usually days.
Oh, good.
So we love it. And it's the easiest $4 that come out of our bank account. My bank account every month.
I think I mean, I have to say there's some really great work that Nate Bowling has been putting out per usual too. He's got some excellent discussions coming up on critical race theory, and it's always something interesting. So I'm glad to hear that. So let's talk about pride. This year, we're kind of coming out of our shells and back into doing some things in a group and some things virtual. So what's sort of the theme of Tacoma Pride this year?
Yeah, the theme is just that coming out from our entire society for public health reasons, needing to be quieter and more solo for so long. Troy Christensen, the executive director of the Rainbow Center, the Rainbow Center is the lead producer of Tacoma Pride Festival, which is a multi-week festival. Many faith and arts and culture and nonprofit communities participate and partake and lead events. The Rainbow Center is the overarching lead producer. I think first of all, it's I often have to remind myself why pride, why that word pride.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? What are we about to celebrate? And so just to the shortness on that, and Troy reminded us about this last night when he provided testimony to accept the proclamation on behalf of the LGBTQ community, along with Stella Keating, by the way, amazing young transgender woman who testified before the United States Congress.
And was just recently at the White House.
The first transgender teenager ever to testify in front of the United States Congress. But I digress. So we say